On April 1, 1945, American forces landed on Okinawa, Japan, beginning one of the Pacific War's largest and most destructive battles. It still matters because it shaped the final months of the war and the meaning of invasion itself. Okinawa was the last major island between Allied forces and the Japanese home islands. Its capture would provide airfields, naval anchorage, and a grim preview of the costs of a direct assault on Japan. By early 1945, Japan was losing ground across the Pacific, but its leaders still hoped to inflict such heavy losses that the Allies might negotiate. Okinawa became a test of whether that hope had any remaining force. In Washington and in the Pacific Command, planners saw Okinawa as a stepping stone toward the Japanese mainland. They expected fierce resistance, but the scale of the coming fight would still prove sobering. The men who directed the battle carried different burdens. Admirals, generals, and island defenders all worked under pressure from governments, time, and fear. Their decisions were shaped as much by exhaustion as by strategy. The American force brought enormous naval gunfire, carrier aircraft, artillery, and a steady stream of supplies. Japanese defenders relied on fortified hills, hidden guns, caves, and a determination to make every ridge costly. For the soldiers and sailors, morale was mixed. Many Americans believed the war was nearing its end, while Japanese troops understood they were fighting on ground that would likely be defended to the last. The route to Okinawa stretched across vast ocean distances, with convoys moving under threat from submarines, aircraft, and weather. Every ship had to arrive intact because the battle would depend on sustained supply. As the fleet neared the island, the coastline revealed a landscape of coral shorelines, steep slopes, and inland ridges. Okinawa's terrain favored defense, especially when combined with rain and low visibility. The weather added another layer of difficulty. Spring rains turned roads into mud, slowed movement, and made artillery positions harder to supply, while fog and cloud cover complicated air support. American planners expected a fast landing and a push inland, supported by overwhelming firepower. Japanese commanders instead relied on a layered defense, intending to absorb the landing and then grind down the advance. On the opening day, the invasion beaches were not the slaughter many had feared. That relative calm was misleading because the main defensive line lay farther inland, waiting behind hills and caves. The first phase became a race to establish supply, artillery, and airfields before the defenders could fully lock the front. Even with initial success, every mile inland brought stronger resistance. The pressure point came at the fortified southern line, where ridges, caves, and reverse slopes favored the defense. Here the battle changed from a landing operation into a slow contest of attrition. Artillery, naval guns, and airstrikes battered the hills, but the defenders often survived underground. The result was a battle of patience, where terrain mattered as much as numbers. The decisive movement was not a single dramatic charge, but a widening American advance that outflanked positions and forced withdrawals. Step by step, the defenders lost the ability to hold each successive line. As the southern defenses weakened, Japanese units faced a hard choice between retreat and annihilation. Some positions held stubbornly until they could no longer influence the larger battle. The collapse came unevenly, not all at once. Once key ridges fell and supply lines broke, organized resistance became harder to sustain, and the battlefield began to unravel from the edges inward. By late June, the battle was effectively over, though isolated fighting and dangerous pockets of resistance continued. For civilians and soldiers alike, the island had been transformed by weeks of relentless combat. The immediate aftermath left Okinawa scarred, with homes ruined, farmland disrupted, and communities displaced. The battle's human cost reached far beyond the front lines and lingered in memory for decades. For the United States, Okinawa became a warning about the likely cost of invading Japan itself. For Japan, it was evidence that the homeland would face overwhelming pressure from sea and air. In the years that followed, the battle influenced military planning, diplomacy, and the memory of the Pacific War. It also helped shape Okinawa's long post-war role as a strategic crossroads. Historians still debate how much the battle alone affected later decisions about ending the war. They also continue to examine the balance between military necessity, civilian suffering, and the limits of available choices. Some details remain qualified because wartime records are incomplete and memories differ. What is clear is that Okinawa became a battle where strategy, terrain, and endurance collided with devastating consequences. Today, Okinawa is both lived in and remembered. Roads, towns, and green hills now cover ground once shaped by trenches and shell fire, while the island still carries the weight of that history. Visitors can still see the landscape's contours and understand why the battle unfolded as it did. The island's terrain remains a quiet witness to the scale of the fighting that took place there. The battle's memory is preserved not only in archives, but in the land itself and in local remembrance. That combination gives Okinawa a place in history that is both military and deeply human. Okinawa showed how a campaign can become larger than the map on which it began. It became a battle about islands, but also about endurance, command, and the price of closing in on war's end. For the troops who fought there, the island was not an abstraction. It was mud, heat, rain, stone, and uncertainty, with each ridge and ravine turning time itself into an enemy. For civilians, the battle meant displacement, fear, and the collapse of ordinary life. Their experience reminds us that island campaigns are never fought on empty ground. The sea around Okinawa also mattered, because control of the water shaped every movement ashore. Naval power turned the island into a surrounded battlefield before the first troops even landed. Air power added speed, reach, and constant pressure, but it could not fully replace ground combat. The battle showed the limits of bombing when defenders could hide beneath the earth. Engineering units became crucial, building roads, clearing obstacles, and keeping the advance supplied. In a battle like this, logistics was not background work. It was the battle's hidden engine. As the fighting dragged on, fatigue reshaped both armies. Exhaustion narrowed choices, slowed movement, and made every new position harder to defend or attack. The battle's scale also reflected the wider Pacific War, where island after island had become a rehearsal for a final confrontation. Okinawa was among the last and most consequential of those contests. Even now, Okinawa invites careful remembrance rather than simple conclusions. Its history is a reminder that the end of a war can be as terrible as its beginning.